Hello and welcome to yet another episode of your favorite D&D based podcast, Mastering Dungeons. I'm Shawn Merwin here with my beloved, belligerent, bellicose,
I thought you were going to say belligerent, and I thought that
beautiful,
was pretty neat.
bewitcherant, Teos Abadia.
How are you doing, Shawn? Happy post weekend. Did you do anything fun?
I was in Toronto. I went up
Hmm.
to Toronto to meet with the Ghostfire Gaming lead producer, Joe Rosso, who is from
Yeah.
Toronto, and Martin Hughes, who is our layout person who lives in London or Brighton, actually. But he came over for a visit. And so we had meetings, and then we went and met the Dungeon Dudes, some streamers, some actual
Yeah.
play streamers, as well as some advice gurus who Ghostfire works with for some of their projects. And we saw their new studio. It's beautiful, right in downtown Toronto. But got to play test some things, got to talk about upcoming projects and strategies, and it was quite fun. And next week, actually tomorrow, I go to Las Vegas. So it's been a whirlwind here. I know you've got something coming up too.
Yeah, I have PAX coming. So I spent this weekend. This weekend was my birthday. I celebrated another cycle around the sun, and I did it in true fashion, gamer fashion, which was to write from sunup to sundown. And when I wasn't eating meals, I was wrangling packs. And I think there are going to be some fun events
Mhm.
there. I think we're going to have a nice time. There's some great DMs there. I love DMs, Shawn, that say things like, "What are the pre-gens wielding, and what are their ancestry class combinations? Because I need to make 3D printed minis for them."
Yep. Yep. That's what I will never be. So good
Yeah.
job to those people who have the tools, the means, and the ambition to do such great work for their players.
Yeah.
But we have a show to get to. We have some things to talk about, and we are going to start with one, yes, one listener corner missive. This one comes from Moonbird via our Patreon Discord, a great place to discuss D&D and other RPG topics. And Moonbird says, I have a question for both of you that sort of crystallized a couple weeks ago, thanks to a question in episode 151. It's about the publishing strategy of Wizards of the Coast. Nowadays, WotC seems to publish much less or no extra material once the initial book is out. No extra adventures, no backgrounds, no settings. Some exceptions might be Curse of Strahd being followed by Van Richten's, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and also getting Dungeon of the Mad Mage, or recently the new Phandelver adventure, based on the previous adventures set there. But it doesn't compare to the 20 official products listed on Wikipedia for Spelljammer or the 32 listed for Planescape, not to mention other settings like Dragonlance or Dark Sun. What explains this difference in strategy for today's
Mm.
Wizards of the Coast? A lack of resources or income from those products? Are they expecting that kind of creativity from the DM's Guild? Is it something else? And this is a question. There are many questions within that one missive, but I think we can speak to it a bit. And I'm going to give Teos the first crack at
Ooh.
this, and I will follow
Yeah.
up with any additions.
So, I mean, there are a lot of angles to this question. This is a great question, a rich question with a lot behind it as to why the strategy is what it is now. Um, when in the second edition days, TSR really exploded the number of settings, it found that this was not good financially. And that's the core of it. The reason it wasn't is that when you give someone 32 Planescape products, they become such a hardcore Planescape fan that they can't possibly afford or see beyond that to all the other settings you're also producing, like Spelljammer, Dragonlance, Dark Sun, etc. And unless you can bring an enormous audience to where it doesn't matter that the Planescape fans don't do anything else, then you are lowering the number of people buying all those other products, and those other products don't sell very well. And that's what happened back then. It's what has happened typically when this kind of approach takes place. If you go too deep down one category, you leave some of those hardcore fans actually behind even then, but you pigeonhole everybody. So and then if we look at the numbers of what TSR did back in those olden days, they lost money, for example, on the Planescape line. Overall, that line lost a lot of money, is what we're finding through the financial analysis. So since second edition, every edition has tried to alter how they address settings to make them profitable. And they'll come up with rules like no box sets, or if we create a Book of Undead, it must apply to all settings so that it becomes universally used by all setting fans. And fifth edition really tried to say, hey, look, it's the Sword Coast. It's the Sword Coast, dummy. That's the only place we're going to, because that way everybody's in the same place. Everybody can buy every product. Every product is for everyone. And I mean, huge success, right? So while you heard people grumble about why aren't we not going to Spelljam or Planescape or wherever, the money was great. The success, the growth of the hobby was great. There's nothing that was going wrong with that early approach. Now we are being drawn more and more to settings. Is that effective? Wizards still has to be very careful about how they explore that. I'll stop there, Shawn, see what you want to add to it.
Yeah, what Teos said times 50. And then let's go to the start of 5th edition, where we've heard from folks at Wizards, designers, and the business side of things, have said that they didn't expect 5th edition. They didn't expect a 6th edition of D&D. They expected to publish this evergreen 5th edition D&D and then put out products as infrequently as it made sense, while supporting the other things that D&D does in terms of licensing and sales. So sell the t-shirts, sell the mugs, sell the dice, sell the movie posters. The game material, while fun and exciting, especially for us gamers, doesn't make that sort of profit that this other stuff does. So that was the plan. So they put out a box set that somebody else designed, by the way, right? Richard Baker designed it.
An ex-employee.
I believe at the time it was an ex-employee. So he did the design on it. The box set. Then the core rule books come out. That was done by Wizards of the Coast. But the first 4 adventures, the first 4 hardcover adventures, the Tyranny of Dragons duo, Rise of Tiamat and Horde of the Dragon Queen, those 2. Then Princes of the Apocalypse, and then Out of the Abyss. Those were done by other studios, designed by other studios, published by Wizards, but written and all of that by Cobalt Press. I think it was Green Ronin and Sasquatch Games.
Yep.
So Wizards didn't want anything to do with creating those adventures. Why? We've talked about it before. Only 1 in every 7, at most, players buy those adventures.
Yeah.
Now, what happened was, whether it was intentional or not, the unintended consequences of this slower release cycle that we were talking about drew more people in. Rather than having a new book every 2 months, having a new book every 6 months to a year meant when you were playing 5th edition D&D at its launch, you were likely, unless your DM is homebrewing, you were likely either playing the box set or you were playing Horde of the Dragon Queen, which then led to a community that grew closer around this one adventure. All the YouTube people, all the streamers, they were talking about this, and you knew what they were talking about because you had played it, because there wasn't anything else official to play. And that really built the community, and it got people engaged with each other in a way that we don't see if the player base is fragmented. And so like I said, unintentionally or not, it was great. It was a great thing for the game. As we saw the cycle of publication increase, especially now as books are coming out at a rapid pace, we are seeing that fragmentation happen. We are seeing people not even, well, I'm going to buy the Strixhaven book because of the School of Magic feel, and I think my players will like that. I'm playing that. Whoops, 3 other books have come out while we were doing this, and I don't even know what they were. I haven't had time to buy them because I'm not going to have time to read them or run them. So we're starting to see that fragmentation, not necessarily even in terms of there's a setting I love, so I'm going to focus on it. It's just timing wise, I can't get everything. So
Yeah.
there's that aspect of it as well. Now there's another question, which is how can Wizards of the Coast best support something like Dragonlance with the one box sets out, and we probably won't see anything official from Wizards? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But if we don't, how could Wizards still support that while not publishing material on their own? And I think Teos knows the answer to this.
Well, we'll see what you're thinking. I mean, I look at the fact that it's taken 10 years to get Dragonlance, Spelljammer, everything that we've seen has been towards the end of it. It's taken 10 years. And so when I hear Jimmy Crawford saying, oh, these are not one shots, okay, but what's the time scale? Because they might as well be one shots, right? Editions have often lasted less than 10 years. So, if I'm going to wait another 10 years for Dragonlance, something significant, that's a very long wait. What I think is more likely is that we're going to see nods to settings, right? So you can have a single, as there's been some hints of multiverse spanning adventure that's going to somehow tell me that I got a taste of Dragonlance and got to return to it. I will say, to me, that kind of thing feels very hollow, and to me, and it's not what that's another conversation that it's nice to have. It's great to have callbacks to things, but if I'm going to spend 20 minutes in Greyhawk, that is to me very different than being able to run adventures in Greyhawk, or even the Wizards of the Coast 5th edition Spelljammer set is different than what a lot of fans wanted, right? Something that would really help them run Spelljammer campaigns. And so if you're waiting for that to come as a second product, well, it may never arrive. More likely is that you may jump onto a Spelljammer to get from A to B and have a battle along the way. And that's fun, but it's not what fans are really asking for. What do you think?
I think, and I'm going to turn this question a little bit on its head. We have had support for all of these settings, not necessarily all of these settings, but we've had a lot of support for Eberron. We've had a lot of support for Ravenloft, Van Richtens. We've had a lot of support for some of these settings via the DM's Guild. The issue is the fans don't call that official. They don't see it as worthwhile because it's not published by Wizards of the Coast. How could Wizards of the Coast fix this situation? To support the hardcore fans while not spending tons and tons of money to create products that are not going to make that money back in sales. They better use the community. They better use third-party publishers. They better use the DM's Guild as a way to say, you want an adventure path set in Eberron? There's not going to be a published one on the shelf, but we're going to make a digital one for you. And here it is right here. And to better market that, to better draw attention to that, can make it feel to fans as if it is official, because who's to say what's official and what's not? Wizards of the Coast is. So if they, I mean, we have 2 adventure paths set in Eberron on the DM's Guild. One was done by the Guild Adepts and one was done through the Adventurers League. How many people who are saying, oh, there's no good Eberron content other than blank, or other than the stuff that Keith Baker did, Wizards can point in that direction. They could do the same thing with Dragonlance with the Adventures League scenarios that Baldman Games are doing.
I think
It's
you're
just a matter of spending the resources to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's the key is that you have to have that concerted effort behind it all, right? So I've blogged in the
Mhm.
past about what made Dark Sun Fourth Edition a really great success. And my understanding from speaking to people at Wizards was it was really successful as a setting compared to all other Fourth Edition settings, including Forgotten Realms. Dark Sun was incredibly successful financially, and I think the key to that was the attention that Wizards gave to it and the deliberate nature of the attention and how it panned out, right? Game
Right.
days at stores. There were, I think, three
Mhm.
store game days plus an encounters season that really brought attention to that. There were early sneak peeks at conventions and some really exciting convention events, even before Dark Sun came out as a setting, right? So if you imagine folks going to conventions and seeing Spelljammer, and then that you can gain those materials, right? Ideally, makes for a lot of excitement, a lot of drum up, a lot of a fan base that has things, and creates all these parts that people can play. And then if you had material in the DM's Guild that really was indicated as being kind of officially blessed, right? The way that the Eberron adventures are, because
Mhm.
it is really nice that for Eberron, you have a huge adventure arc. It's probably the biggest adventure arc that's ever been written for Eberron. Just as you had with Ashes of Athos and Dark Sun 4E, right? The longest series of adventures ever built for the setting of Dark Sun is in
Mhm.
fourth edition, and it's all available, right? I think I've sent
Right.
24,000 copies of it out now. Um, that's the kind of thing
Right.
that really creates a depth for a setting. What I don't think works very well
Mhm.
is the idea that I can just go to the DM's Guild and see hundreds of supplements for Spelljammer and I don't know which to choose. That's fine.
Mhm.
It's great, but that's like when I was on the internet, on Usenet and there were just random ideas from people. It's great, but it's not what I'm looking
Right.
for, right? And so I think but that requires that effort. Someone at Wizards has to want to dedicate that effort to push that
Right.
setting, which I think would be good for sales if they can dedicate that attention to it.
Right. And it's not easy to do.
No.
And sometimes it's not cheap to do, but it's not as expensive as creating and putting out a hardcover book that needs to be printed and distributed and so on.
Yeah.
So that's where that cost analysis needs to be done. But it doesn't necessarily it's not a lot of effort, but it's a lot of coordination.
Yes.
And sometimes coordination is 20 times harder than the effort, it feels like, right?
Yeah.
Getting the right people in the right place to talk to each other to make these things happen. Oh, we need a highlight for this on the DMs Guild,
Yeah.
and we need 3 YouTube videos to talk about it. And we need, it's just that it's that coordination. The effort isn't even as much as difficult as that coordination.
And fifth
So
edition has often,
hopefully,
if
yeah.
I can just say, fifth edition has often fumbled the ball on that coordination, right? So, for example, I wrote Cloud Giant's Bargain that was ill defined as to what it was before it released. And then it was this gift at movie theaters, which is a fine idea,
Mhm.
except a lot of movie theaters didn't get it
Right.
in time, right? So there was this, and
Mhm.
now people want adventure and can't get it anywhere. And so there's just this whole lack of really that detailed analysis of how will this work? How do we make this a success? And then how do we iterate on that? When we do it again, how is it a success, right? Because and we saw that it was really good with fourth edition. I think D&D Encounters was a program that every season really worked. When it was truly an encounter season, it worked on a specific path that was refined over time, but improved. Right, it didn't suddenly falter for no reason
Mhm.
whatsoever. It did what it was supposed to. And same thing with the game days.
Right.
There was that method by which stores received a game day, ran it, it worked, it created buzz and attention and pleased players and left DMs and materials and all of that. And I think it's hard, like you say, but it needs to be done with concerted effort or it fails.
The other day, I saw someone say, "I wish there'd been a follow-up to the Dragon of Icespire Peak," right? We got that adventure, but we didn't get a follow-up. And I'm just sitting there going, yes, how,
Yeah.
yes, through James Introcaso, Will Doyle, and I were hired to create the follow-up for it for Wizards of the Coast. This wasn't third-party stuff. This was us writing for Wizards of the Coast. And it, it went up on the DMs Guild, and it never quite got there was something in the box set itself that said, you want further adventures, here's a link
Wait, when you
to,
say DM's
but
Guild,
if
it went on
people
D&D
just throw
Beyond,
that
right?
flyer out, I'm sorry, yeah,
Yes,
D&D
not
Beyond,
not on the,
on
because if
D&D
it had
Beyond,
been on
right?
the DM's Guild, that would be great. But
Not on DM's Guild.
yeah,
Yeah, that would have been nice. But yeah, so it went right to D&D Beyond. So, dozens of people, if you were a player and you didn't buy the box set, but you played it and your DM didn't think of it, you would have never known
right.
that these adventures are there as a follow-up
I,
to Icespire Peak.
I'll do
And
one better.
yeah.
Shawn, the designers that worked on Spelljammer Academy, which was an Adventures League official preview to the
Mhm,
Spelljammer setting, right? Awesome. Exactly the kind of thing I want to
mhm,
see. Was available for a short time for free on D&D Beyond. And if you didn't claim it then, you can't get it now. There's no reason for that. I
mhm.
mean, at least charge for it. Like it's there, right? They just have to unhide it to
Right.
new people and charge for it.
Yeah.
Why would you just lose that content, right? And if I'm a person if I
Yeah.
had worked on that project, I'd feel terrible that nobody can get it, right? Um, and it
Right.
was
Yeah.
sloppy also behind the scenes, right? Some DMs that ran the event for Wizards of the Coast through Baldwin Games received a PDF of it, nicely formatted. Others did not, and you can't get that now, and it's that's really frustrating,
Mhm.
right? So close.
Yeah. Yeah. And none of this is malicious, and none of
No,
it is even it's not unfathomable how this happens,
right?
right? It's one person drives it and then moves on to something else, and no one else
Yeah,
in the hierarchy of people that need to know are able to pick it up and move it to the next stage.
yeah,
And we've
yeah,
all been in situations like that. If you work or deal with an organization of more than two people, you've likely been in a similar
yeah.
situation. So it's tough, and what it takes is experience, right? It takes experience, like Chris Tulloch at Wizards of the
Mhm.
Coast, who's been doing organized play stuff since a long time ago,
Yeah.
right? He knows these things. He knows the system. He knows, and so if he can get a hold of a project and get in touch with the right people, he can normally drag things across the
Yeah.
finish line, like he did with D&D Encounters, which went so well.
Yeah, though I will say that the other problem that can happen is when the company begins to see areas as costs, like organized play,
Mhm.
and starts to
Right.
forget why they
Yeah.
do these things, then we go through the cycle that we've been
Mhm.
through so many times, where Wizards of the Coast says, "I don't know about organized play. Can we get rid of that? Can we just turn that off?" And we turn it off for a while or lessen it. Right? There were times at 4E when they would advertise Living Forgotten Realms all the time, and they drew in lots of people. And then towards the end of fourth edition, you could not find a mention, even though the program was active. Right? Nothing, no
Mhm.
advertising, no support, no mention of it anywhere. It's as if the program had died. And these cycles come and go all the time where, folks at Wizards want to destroy organized play, shove it under a rug somewhere, outsource it, whatever. And then they suddenly wake up to, oh, look at all the benefits it has. Of course, we're going to do this. And that's frustrating as well. And I get why it happens, but it's
Yep.
frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So, Moonbird, I hope we answered your question and probably wandered off beyond it, but thank you for writing in. You can send your questions to us in so many different ways, which we will say at the end of the show. Now let's get into our news and commentary section, starting with the Phandelver and Below adventure. We're starting to get some sneak peeks and some previews, and Wizards of the Coast even provided some, and I'm going to let Teos tell you all about it.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that New BDM went through it on Twitter, X, whatever. I'm not really on the platform, so I missed it. I hope New BDM will come over to Mastodon and share those kinds of posts so I can see them. But Wizards of the Coast has had a number of videos looking into the upcoming Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk adventure. They have a really nice video piece with senior designer Amanda Hammond sharing details, stating roughly a third of the book is the original adventure remastered. That's not surprising given that they're not selling the original version of it, and you wouldn't want to necessarily lose that. I think if you just didn't include that, a lot of people would object. It also includes new art and new plot hooks that bridge between the original and older content. The rest of the product and adventure is about what is found in that lost mine, as I guess you get greedy and dig too deep. The mystery circles back to the monoliths in previous adventures, giving them an explanation, which I think is interesting because I thought Rime of the Frost Maiden had explained what these were, but we get a major adventure that circles around this obelisk, and it feels like it has a kind of rod of seven parts aspect from what I saw in these videos. And the goal was also in this product to have Phandelin feel like a home base that the players want to protect from these new threats, which I always like when adventurers try to do that. I'm curious to look at that angle and see how well they do that, because D&D struggles to say you care about this town, but hey, go off to an endless stream of dungeons and never return. So I'm eager to see how well it achieves that.
Yeah, I have specifically not looked at any previews, any teasers. I want to get this adventure. This is one of the adventures, and it's been a while. I've been looking forward to. I want to get this and read it, and I think we should talk about it on the show once we do that.
Yeah,
I think
I
that
think
would
that'd be
be
great too.
a,
I'm
a
excited for it,
fun
and I'm
exercise.
sorry, Shawn, that I just spoiled
Yep.
apparently parts of it for you.
No, you haven't spoiled anything because I really don't ever listen to you.
Thank
In other news, Baldur's Gate 3 continues its strong play and review cycle. However, so it's getting high scores on places like Metacritic, IGN, PC Gamer, Open Critic, 96 out of 100, 10 out of 10, 97% approval, 96% approval. But we're seeing more, especially in certain news venues such as Forbes, that the more people play, the more bugs they're finding as they get into Act 2 and 3. And Forbes claims that, quote, Act 3 is a mess with a ton of bugs that are affecting many people and forcing people to go back to saved games. Hours of play later, they have to go back to a save because of the bugs. I'm not playing it, haven't played it yet. May play it in about 5 years or so when life gets back to a normal pace. But everything that I've heard from real people I know, not critics online, has been it's phenomenal, and
Yeah,
they just can't get enough of it. I've lost my gaming group to can we play tonight? I don't know. Why don't we play Baldur's Gate instead? Well, because I'm not playing Baldur's Gate. That's
yeah.
why. So
Well,
yeah.
I hear a lot of very positive things from my friends as well. I'm not playing it yet. Someday I will. The other thing is that honestly, a few bugs are really about establishing a classic feel. I mean, if you didn't get to play those gold box set video games and try to get a lightning bolt off without killing your own party with your
Mhm.
own lightning bolt, time over time over time, and you just kept restoring and trying again, and you could never line it up.
No, that's not a bug, but yeah, I definitely understand that pain. And we're getting something free up from Baldur's Gate on D&D Beyond, correct?
We are. The Baldur's Gate Gazetteer, which appears in the product Descent into Avernus, is available for free. We've got a link in the show notes, or head to D&D Beyond, where it probably will have a little banner for you. You can claim that free Gazetteer that tells you all about Baldur's Gate. There are also some articles and videos on the D&D channels that provide insights into Baldur's Gate or aspects of the game, including very smart, some videos that are clearly designed for you're a fan of the video game. Here's how to get started with the actual 5e tabletop game. Some really nice interviews with Dan Dillon, for example, that are sort of, hey, you're playing this game. How close is it to D&D? How do I get started? And Dan does a great job of answering those questions.
The D&D movie is back in our sights. We did it the best we could to cover it up until it launched. We talked about it when we saw it, and now we're going to keep an eye on it as it fades into D&D movie sunset. But the question came up, did the D&D movie really lose money? We know that it didn't quite hit the box office expectations that the movie had, but not many movies have hit their box office expectations recently. So, what did you hear about this analysis of the D&D movie after its box office run?
Yeah, Dave Clark, hi Dave, on the blog fullmoonstorytelling.com pondered this question and is clearly a nerd for data. They began to pull all kinds of data sources together, tracking the reported costs and income of the movie in theaters. It's really very interesting if you care about kind of those numbers and want to see some data. It's really cool to look at. He also looks at things like the change in search interest to find that there's a huge spike in D&D, both the game and the movie, right around the Super Bowl ad, and then two smaller correlated
Mhm.
spikes when the movie is announced and when the movie is about to release. And he argues that likely there is a strong bolster in D&D sales because of these search terms lining up. We also saw that in the book scan data, so that seems to hold true. The article
Yeah.
then looks at streaming for the movie. The movie has been on Paramount Plus for over 3 months, and from its release has been a top 10 movie every week across all streaming platforms. Last week it was ninth. It was number one in the UK and Ireland markets when it released there, number two in Canada on Netflix, released releases on Amazon Prime globally, or released on Amazon Prime globally on August 25th. For 35 days, it was number two in iTunes, top 10 for all but 7 of the last 110 days there. Number one on Google Play for 44 days, never below number 7. So it continues with these kinds of examples in the article to say, hey, this is not a one shot, this is a campaign. And the movie
Mhm.
seems to be doing well on this campaign. So it'll be interesting to see in this era of how studios like to claim losing money when they don't because they get tax write offs. Is the D&D movie going to be seen over time as an actual success? Will it be financially success? Could we ever find out? I think those are all great questions, Sean.
Okay, well, I'm happy to hear it. I know I've watched it a couple of times, once in the theater and then a couple times streaming.
Yep, me
And
too.
it will be interesting to see in the long run down the road if its use as marketing material to point people to the game and then on to further products based around the game will pay dividends for it. I have a feeling it will, as we're seeing here, but it'll be interesting to see, especially with the 50th anniversary coming up, if they can put the movie together with that sort of marketing push and celebration to make it an even bigger deal than it already was.
Yeah, for sure.
And finally, we're going to talk about Ed Greenwood, one of our favorite game designers of yore and today. Uh, he has a Patreon, Ed does. If you don't know who Ed Greenwood is, shame on you, but we will fix that right now. Ed Greenwood is the creator of the Forgotten Realms campaign, or Forgotten Realms setting, which you may have heard of. Uh, Ed now has a Patreon, which is great because he, let's just say, may have never gained financially as much as he could have uh, based on the dealings of TSR and Ed back in the day. But now you can support him with his Patreon, where he provides all sorts of Forgotten Realms lore, or as we experts call it, Realms lore, video form talking about all sorts of things for the realms. So in a recent episode, Ed covered a story behind some of the strangest Forgotten Realms vampires, such as a lich-hating dragon in Chult and a vampiric mimic. But I know, Teos, that you have a favorite vampire.
Yeah, I mean those were great, don't get me wrong, but
Mhm. Mhm.
Yovel, the Crimson Flump, consumed with self-loathing and rage after it mistakenly ate a vampire bound in rat form. That's vintage and Greenwood right there, and I loved it. This
Mhm.
Flump is basically Blade. It has all of the Flump and vampire strengths, but none of the weaknesses. It needs no coffin, no rest, and has no sunlight sensitivity. It's now a crimson color due to its anger and shuns other flump because it's embarrassed at its state. And it has this funny line between being
Mhm.
evil as a vampire, but not, still having some of its, still has some of its flump essence, so it doesn't really want to cause trouble. And found near Skullport, and it's taken an interest to learning about the adventurers and inhabitants there. So it's all great. It's all in the video where he covers these three vampires, and I had a lot of fun. And thank you to our Patreon Discord for bringing this to my attention because that was a lot of fun to watch.
That is brilliant. We're going to end there, but next week we are going to discuss pay for freelancers in the industry, as well as meaningful, important choices in gaming. So there's a little teaser for you to come back next week and hear our news segment.